Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts. Imagine being trapped in your cabin on, a billion-dollar floating luxury resort.
Which sounds great until you realize you're barred from even stepping onto your own balcony.
Right. And meanwhile, there are military gunboats literally firing projectiles into the water just a few miles away. And that's not a hypothetical scenario from some thriller novel. Based on the maritime intelligence crossing our desks today, that is exactly what thousands of passengers just narrowly avoided.
Yeah, it's a really sobering reality check. I mean, we're looking at this fundamental clash between the carefully curated bubble of vacation hospitality and the stark, really unpredictable physical and political environment these massive vessels operate in.
Exactly. So today, for you listening, we're really focusing on how cruise safety and global disruption are actively shaping real trips right now. We're tracing the through line from massive geopolitical choke points in the Middle East that can literally trap entire fleets, all the way down to the micro-level tragedy of a single man overboard off the coast of Australia.
And, of course, we'll look at how these extreme vulnerabilities are forcing the industry to, well, radically redesign the ultimate failsafe, which is abandoning ship.
Right. And before we get into the heavy details, just a quick editorial note for you. When we discuss international conflicts today, we're simply reporting the facts on the ground as they affect the cruise industry. We are not taking sides or endorsing any political viewpoints.
No, absolutely not. Our focus is entirely on the operational reality for these ships, their crews, and you, the listener.
Yeah. And, I mean, that operational reality has been severely tested in the Persian Gulf over the last few weeks.
Totally. We saw a situation where 6 massive cruise ships, representing a combined capacity of roughly 17,000 berths, were just completely stranded, like they were trapped behind the Strait of Hormuz.
And the Strait of Hormuz is essentially the jugular vein of global shipping, right? It's this narrow, highly contested aquatic highway between Iran and Oman.
Yeah, about 20% of the world's oil flows through it.
So a massive bottleneck. There isn't just a minor inconvenience for a cruise line. It's a global economic event. But tell me about the actual mechanics of this stranding. Like, why were these specific ships cornered in the Gulf to begin with?
Well, it really comes down to the rigid, highly optimized calendar of the cruise industry. You had ships like MSC Cruises, MSC Euribia, TUI Cruises Mindshift 4 and 5, the Celestial Journey, Celestial Discovery, and the Arroyo.
Right, they had all been spending their winter season in the Gulf.
Exactly. They were running these really lucrative itineraries at places like Dubai, Doha, and Abu Dhabi. But as the weather warms up, they're scheduled for the highly profitable summer Mediterranean season.
Yeah.
So to get to Europe, they have to transit the Strait of Hormuz, cross the Arabian Sea, and head up through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal.
And the geography offers zero alternatives. I mean, you either go through the choke point or you sail all the way around the entire continent of Africa.
Right, which adds weeks of travel and just astronomical fuel costs.
But going through simply was not safe. So they sat idle until this incredibly brief, highly politicized window opened up, right?
Yeah. Iranian Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araki suddenly announced a temporary reopening of the strait for commercial vessels. But he explicitly tied this operational window to a temporary political ceasefire taking place over in Lebanon.
Wait. So the safe passage of civilian cruise ships carrying multiple nationalities was directly contingent on the status of a completely separate military ceasefire hundreds of miles away.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I mean, that is the nature of a geopolitical choke point. The leverage is absolute. So the cruise lines recognized this was a fleeting opportunity, resulting in a mad dash. All 6 ships initiated an immediate transit to clear the strait.
And most of them made it to Europe, right?
5 of them successfully began their repositioning toward Europe and the Mediterranean. The Arroyo actually adjusted its heading toward Jeddah in Saudi Arabia.
But that window didn't stay open long at all. I mean, less than 24 hours later, Iranian officials completely reversed their position and just slammed the strait shut again.
Yeah, the justification they provided for the sudden closure was the United States' refusal to lift its blockade of Iranian vessels and ports.
Right.
And with that, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, stepped in and imposed severe new conditions on the waterway.
What kind of conditions?
They declared that any future transit would require their explicit permission. Furthermore, they asserted the right to aggressively inspect any vessels passing through, and they announced they would begin charging tolls.
And this wasn't just a bureaucratic delay either. Like, the water was actively dangerous. I was reading that the UK Maritime Trade Operations Office was fielding multiple simultaneous incident reports during this
Oh,
window.
absolutely. A container ship was actually struck by a projectile about 25 nautical miles northeast of Oman.
Right, and a tanker in the area was approached by two IRGC gunboats that simply opened fire without even broadcasting any radio contact or challenge.
And the threat to the cruise vessels specifically was direct and documented. The maritime security intelligence firm Vanguard Tech reported a chilling interaction.
Oh, wow, what happened?
The IRGC radioed one of the transiting cruise ships with an explicit threat. The transmission stated, quote, "We are carrying out operation. We will fire and destroy you."
I cannot even imagine the tension on the bridge of that ship. I mean, you're commanding a massive vessel, completely unarmed, carrying civilians, and you receive a direct military threat.
It's terrifying. And it went beyond just radio chatter, too. There was a physical incident reported near TUI's Mindshift 4.
Right, Vanguard Tech documented an unexplained splash in the water near it during its transit.
Yeah, and in naval terms, a splash of unknown origin in a conflict zone typically implies a projectile, like either a warning shot or a munition that just missed its target.
It's important to emphasize, though, that all 6 cruise ships ultimately made it through the strait without any injuries or physical damage. But they conducted these transits essentially as ghost ships, right? Operating with heavily reduced skeleton crews.
Exactly, because they had already offloaded the passengers.
And I want to dig into how you actually accomplish that, because you don't just tell 15,000 people to go hail a taxi in the desert. We are talking about a massive logistical evacuation before the ships ever weighed anchor.
Oh, the logistics are a nightmare.
So when cruise industry reporter Diane Tierney noted that passengers were confined to their cabins and barred from their balconies, I assume they were executing a lockdown protocol for structural cover against potential aerial drone strikes or shrapnel.
Yeah, that is the standard maritime security protocol in a high-threat port environment. If there's a risk of incoming projectiles, you want your passengers behind layers of steel bulkheads, not exposed on exterior decks or glass-lined balconies.
That makes total sense. But once the immediate port security was stabilized, the lines faced the gargantuan task of repatriation. I mean, MSC Cruises had to abruptly secure onward travel for over 1,500 guests.
Right, and the TUI group had to utilize their own TUI airlines while also scrambling for private charters for the passengers of Mindshift 4 and 5.
How does a cruise line even execute an emergency airlift of that magnitude on zero notice? Because commercial flights out of places like Dubai or Doha are already booked solid.
It requires activating global aviation brokers. The cruise lines essentially have to buy out whatever idle aircraft capacity exists on the global market at that exact moment.
Wow.
They're chartering wide-body jets at absolute premium emergency rates. They're paying massive penalties to divert those planes, securing emergency landing slots, and absorbing all the associated terminal fees.
So we're talking about millions of dollars hemorrhaging from the operating budget in a matter of hours.
Oh, easily. And that's entirely separate from the cost of refunding the passengers for the canceled portions of their voyages.
Right, so considering the sheer scale of moving 15,000 people out of a conflict zone through limited air capacity and the astronomical financial bleeding you just described, doesn't this expose a fatal flaw in the industry's business model? I mean, the tight summer Mediterranean repositioning schedules rely entirely on the assumption that geography will always cooperate.
It definitely reveals a severe structural vulnerability, without question. The industry operates on this highly optimized, just-in-time logistics model. A ship finishes its Gulf season in March, clears the Suez in April, and is picking up lucrative European fares in Barcelona by May.
Right.
But when a geopolitical choke point severs that timeline, the entire financial calculus of that vessel's year is destroyed. It's really forcing executive boards to seriously evaluate the risk-to-reward ratio of deploying multi-billion-dollar assets to politically volatile regions during the winter months.
Absolutely. So we have this massive macro-level failure where the industry simply cannot control the geopolitical zones its ships must pass through. But, operational control doesn't just fail on a global map. Sometimes it fails right at the perimeter of the ship's own hull. Which brings us to a deeply tragic incident on the Carnival Splendor.
Yeah. When the macro-level logistics of avoiding a war zone fade into the background, we're left with the terrifying reality of a singular crisis in open water. And when that happens, the severe limitations of our current onboard safety technology are just put under a harsh, unforgiving spotlight.
So on April 18th, 2026, the Carnival Splendor was returning to Sydney from a 4-night cruise near Moreton Island. And sometime during the voyage, a man in his 70s went overboard.
Yeah, and the subsequent response highlights the sheer scale of maritime rescue operations. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority, AMSA, was notified that a passenger was missing approximately 30 kilometers northeast of Morton Island.
The assets deployed were staggering.
Truly. AMSA coordinated Challenger jets flying in from Cairns and Melbourne. 5 different rescue helicopters scrambled from the Brisbane area. 6 distinct surface vessels and assistance from the Queensland Police.
They executed a massive grid search for roughly 16 hours. I mean, finding a human being in the ocean amidst swells and currents is like trying to find a specific grain of sand on a beach while the wind is blowing.
It's nearly impossible. Ultimately, the search was suspended and the passenger is presumed dead. Carnival later confirmed that they reviewed onboard CCTV footage, which tragically showed the guests climbing over a safety railing and jumping from the ship.
It's an absolute nightmare for the family. But from a structural safety standpoint, the detail that stands out to me is how the alarm was actually raised.
Right. The bridge was not alerted by any automated system on the ship. The alarm was only sounded because the man's family realized he was missing, searched for him, and finally alerted the crew.
Wow.
The security team then had to manually scrub through hours of archival CCTV footage to determine what actually occurred and roughly when it happened.
Okay, wait. In an era of incredibly smart ships, where the app can track my smartphone's exact location to deliver a drink to my deck chair, why are we still relying on family members to notice someone is missing hours later? Why isn't automated detection a standard safety structural requirement? Are the lines just being cheap, or is there a genuine technical barrier preventing them from retrofitting older ships like the Splendor?
It's a combination of regulatory lag and historical technological hurdles. The Carnival Splendor does not have a man-overboard detection system. To understand why, you have to look at what that system actually requires. Modern man-overboard tech utilizes a combination of thermal imaging, radar, and LiDAR.
And for those who might not know, LiDAR is essentially using rapid laser pulses to measure distance and create a highly accurate 3D map of an environment.
Correct. The system uses those lasers and thermal cameras to drape an invisible digital net, or a tripwire, if you will, around the entire perimeter of the ship's hull. If a mass of a specific size and heat signature breaks that tripwire and falls downward, the system instantly alerts the bridge. It logs the exact GPS coordinates and the exact millisecond of the event.
Meaning the ship can execute a hard turn and be back on site in minutes, rather than discovering the incident hours later when the vessel is 50 miles away.
Exactly. Because in any water conditions, survival time is a ticking clock. Every hour that passes before the bridge is aware of an incident exponentially degrades the probability of a successful rescue.
But so why don't older ships have this?
Well, historically, these systems suffered from a massive false positive rate. The sensors would trigger bridge alarms for heavy sea spray, heavy rain, or even large birds flying too close to the hull. Bridge crews would start ignoring the alarms because they were constantly going off.
The boy who cried wolf syndrome, but with lasers.
Precisely. However, in recent years, machine learning and AI have drastically improved the software's ability to distinguish between a falling human and a wave. The technology is now highly reliable.
So what's the holdup?
Maritime law and international safety of life at sea regulations just have not caught up to mandate these systems universally, especially for older tonnage like the Splendor. So you have this profound technological gap across the global fleet.
And the absence of that instant alert system caused cascading disruptions for everyone else involved with the ship, too. Because the Splendor stayed on site to participate in the search, its return to Sydney was severely delayed.
Yeah, that pushed the embarkation window for the next thousands of waiting passengers all the way back to an 8:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. boarding time. Carnival had to scramble to instruct guests not to arrive at the terminal early, which is a massive logistical headache for people who have already checked out of hotels or flown in.
And Carnival announced no compensation for the significantly shortened trip. And, casting an even darker shadow over this specific sailing, the Overboard tragedy happened just hours after a completely separate fatality.
Yeah, that was incredibly sad. Earlier that very same day, during a port call at Morton Island, a 67-year-old woman was found unresponsive in the water while snorkeling near the Tangalooma wrecks. Authorities attempted resuscitation but were unsuccessful.
2 fatalities in a 24-hour period on a single vacation.
It really underscores the harsh reality we discussed earlier. You have thousands of people operating in a remote, inherently hostile environment. When a medical emergency occurs in the water or someone goes over the rail, your reliance on the immediate physical safety infrastructure of the ship is absolute.
Which provides a direct line to our final story. If the stranding in Hormuz demonstrated the staggering difficulty of keeping a ship out of danger, and the Splendor tragedy highlighted the gaps in monitoring who stays on the ship, we have to talk about what happens when the ship itself is lost. We are talking about a radical rethink of the ultimate maritime fail-safe, abandoning ship.
Yeah, the structural need for a faster, more adaptable evacuation method is really driving the modernization of a technology that hasn't fundamentally changed in decades.
Right. I mean, when you picture a lifeboat, you picture those massive, rigid, orange fiberglass bathtubs hanging off the side of the hull. They look incredibly heavy, they swing violently in high winds, and the mechanical process of lowering them on cables seems painfully slow.
Traditional lifeboats are essentially small, cumbersome ships in their own right. The deployment involves complex davits and pulleys. Loading them requires passengers to step across a gap into a swinging boat hanging high above the water.
Which creates massive bottlenecks during a panic, I'd imagine.
Yeah, exactly. But a company called Survitec is attempting to completely replace that paradigm with an advanced evacuation system called Seahaven. And they just cleared a massive regulatory hurdle by earning a technology qualification statement from DNV.
Let's define DNV for a moment, because their approval isn't just a shiny sticker. DNV is one of the world's leading classification societies. In maritime law, a classification society dictates the technical standards for the construction and operation of ships. So if a society like DNV doesn't certify your equipment as safe, you can't get insurance, and port authorities will legally bar your ship from entry.
Yeah, so their qualification means the Seahaven system has moved from a theoretical concept to an independently vetted, legally recognized safety mechanism.
So what does Seahaven actually look like? If we are getting rid of the orange bathtubs, what replaces them? I kind of picture it like an airplane emergency slide across with a highly maneuverable, motorized life raft.
That is a perfect analogy. Seahaven utilizes two massive, self-propelled, inflatable survival craft. But the true innovation is the embarkation process. Passengers do not step into a boat hanging in the air. Instead, they evacuate via vertical escape helical slides.
Like a giant spiral chute enclosed in fabric.
Exactly. It's a rapid descent system. Passengers enter the top of the slide directly from the ship's deck, slide down safely in a controlled spiral pattern, and are deposited directly into the already deployed floating survival craft waiting on the water.
That's incredible, and the capacity is massive, right?
Yeah. A single Seahaven system can evacuate up to 1,060 passengers.
The fact that these inflatable crafts are self-propelled seems like a critical upgrade, too.
Yeah.
A traditional inflatable life raft just drifts at the mercy of the ocean.
It solves a major vulnerability. In a catastrophic sinking or a severe fire, a drifting raft can easily be pulled back into the danger zone by ocean currents or, the hydrodynamic suction of the sinking mothership.
Oh, right.
But because the Seahaven craft have their own propulsion, once they're loaded, the operators can actively maneuver them away from the hazard zone and navigate toward rescue vessels.
What kind of testing did DNV actually put this through? Because trusting an inflatable structure to hold over 1,000 panicked people requires serious validation.
The trials were exhaustive. DNV mandated full-scale deployment tests under various weather conditions to ensure the inflatables unpack and inflate flawlessly every single time. They conducted rigorous slide integrity evaluations, basically testing whether the fabric and seams could withstand hundreds of human bodies sliding down in rapid succession without tearing or generating dangerous friction heat.
Oh, wow. Yeah, friction heat would be a problem.
Exactly. And they ran maximum capacity embarkation simulations with real people to time exactly how long it takes to push 1,060 passengers through the chutes. And finally, they executed propulsion and maneuverability trials in open water.
So it passed all the physical stress tests. When do we actually see this bolted onto a cruise ship?
Well, Survitec is now navigating the alternative design and arrangement process, because current international maritime law is strictly and specifically written around the use of traditional rigid lifeboats. Any new system has to legally prove it provides an equivalent or superior level of safety before a flag state will allow it.
Got it.
They haven't announced a first vessel installation yet, but they're aggressively targeting both new builds and retrofits for existing ships.
The retrofit application is fascinating to me. If a cruise line could rip out the heavy steel davits and the massive fiberglass lifeboats on an older ship and replace them with these packed inflatable systems, The weight savings would be immense.
Huge.
You would drastically improve the ship's fuel efficiency, lower its center of gravity, and theoretically make evacuation significantly faster.
It represents a complete modernization of survival mechanics. And it circles back perfectly to the core theme we've been looking at today.
Yeah.
Whether a cruise line is trying to negotiate safe passage through a closed military strait in the Middle East, or responding to a sudden, tragic loss of life off the coast of Australia, the foundational challenge remains identical, right?
Managing the physical safety of thousands of human beings in environments that are inherently hostile to human life.
Exactly. It really forces you to view these megaships differently. They aren't just resorts. They are massive, vulnerable floating cities. And the logistical infrastructure required to protect the citizens of those cities is under constant extreme pressure to evolve.
Which leaves us with a really provocative final dynamic to consider. Passenger capacities are skyrocketing, right? We now have vessels capable of carrying well over 7,000 guests. We're witnessing a genuine collision between the massive towering scale of modern cruising and the absolute physical limits of safety and geography.
Right.
Between geopolitical choke points that can trap entire fleets without warning and the immense logistical hurdles of evacuating thousands of people in a catastrophic emergency. Will the future of the cruise industry be defined not by the incredible exotic places these megaships can go, but by the physical and political realities of where they can't?
That is a fascinating question to end on.
It really is. Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.